Robert, well, thanks a lot for your time today. I'm looking forward to hear the story of this awesome project called Scepter and Sword. So, Robert, please tell me about yourself.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on the program. Thanks for having me. The background of how I got to wine was really driven more by personal passion. My background is actually in branding and marketing. I own a branding agency called Workshop Built. And part of those passions started to meld together because my love for branding and my love for wine start to make me think about opportunities when I'm shopping, when I'm visiting wineries, what we could do. So it's a pretty logical progression. And then the real inspiration came after a trip to Europe and visiting palaces and museums out there. And the thinking got to, let's put something into an experience and build a brand out of it through wine.
So you're obviously not a winemaker. You're a sales and marketing guy, create great brands. What other brands have you worked on before?
Well, my career, I was fortunate because I started with a media company back in Canada, and I worked on a lot of different types of brands and a lot of large brands. So my first foray in my US agency life was working on luxury brands out in New York. So I got to work with brands like LVMH and Cartier, Tiffany, and nice high-end luxury brands where, the craft of luxury marketing was really down pat. So it was an interesting way to start in the industry and to start observing. And then from there, I've worked on pretty much everything from automotive, insurance, a lot of real estate. And, I started to figure out that brands all have the same kind of pattern. They need to build meaning out of the products they offer. And you can learn a lot from one category to the other, which is why I was excited to get to wine. Well, I love wine, so no secret that you're going to put your time where your passions are and your hobbies. So I love visiting wineries. I love tasting different wines. And when I start putting my marketing and branding hat on, you start to look at how wine's marketed and how wines are branded. And then I just started to see opportunity. I really saw opportunity in this segment that we're in, which is we call it the premium segment. It's the $15 to $20, $20+ segment, where I found the wines were the hardest to find, good quality options. I mean, you could find interesting brands and packaging, but I always found the wine to be a little more on the less sophisticated side, a little sweeter than it should be. So I thought there's probably an opportunity here to build a brand and to raise the bar a little bit in the sophistication of how we present and how the wine drinks.
Got it. And so tell me, where's all this wine, where does it come from?
All right, so these wines come from estate vineyards up in Columbia Valley, Washington. We really like that area because first of all, I think the nature of it, it's an up and comer. I think it's only 25% planted right now, which when you taste the wines, it was pretty much a stunning event for me because I did not expect to get the quality I did. When you're doing this project, you're tasting a lot of wines constantly. Right. And you almost develop an expectation like that something at this level is not going to be that good. But when we got our hands on these wines, we were flabbergasted at the quality, and to the point where we had to double check that everything we saw was accurate. It's a very value oriented area, and I think the quality is super high. Great stories about the soils and how things grow out there with the climate, very conducive to wine growing.
Right.
And in our particular case, we were drawn to the romance of the story of our partner wine estates. They're actually fruit growers, and there are 3 or 4 generations fruit growers in apples and in cherries. So they got to wine about 15 years ago, and naturally they already had, a whole process and a whole approach to growing grapefruit. And I think that's where all wine starts, is with grapefruit anyway. So it was really an interesting connection to make, and it blossomed into the partnership we have now.
So what triggered Washington, not Napa, Sonoma, another area?
Well, those are all great areas. And I think when you're trying to put a product together, we started this almost 2 years ago. We started the project, and it all began with research. And we spent a good 3 months doing research on the category, consumer trends, and of course, where wine is grown and how that attracts different segments of the market, and also how it's priced. Right. So remember, we already had an idea that our opportunity was going to be in delivering additional value, like a higher up step for a price point. And that price point is a popular area. I think it's very popular with supermarket wines, big box retailers. So we wanted to get something that would outperform the typical brand that you would see there. And that meant just looking a little harder for the value, because you can get great wine any of the regions that you mentioned, but you're going to pay a premium in many cases. So for us, as a brand that wanted to lead this area, we wanted to find excellent value and to build a story around that. And I think that's how we ended up in Columbia Valley.
Wow. Well, that's a great region. Like I said, it's, there's a lot of great families there. Obviously you were very fortunate to, have a 4-generation family of farmers and people working in vineyards. That is awesome. In sales and marketing, and research is key, right? And I think your market research, obviously to have those entry level wines is very important, because it's so hard sometimes to break that barrier for people to understand that wine should be approachable to everybody.
Yes.
And sometimes they look at that, right? We look at a bottle and we're like, oh man, that's $90, $100 a bottle. I'm only going to get 4 glasses, as I'm having dinner with your friend or your family. Like, wow, it's a commitment, right? It's a serious commitment.
Absolutely.
About that, right? And I love that, we'll talk about your price points in a little bit, but you everything that you have lined up, it's all approachable. Anyone could go out and pick it up. And is your wine mostly going to be distributed in California, or are you going to have U.S. distribution?
So the goal for this brand is definitely to grow as a national brand and beyond. There's no question about that. We think we have an interesting approach to how wine is marketed and how we could tell stories around it. We also have a social mooring to this brand. It's very much centered around issues of social equality and female empowerment. So we want to be able to have a platform off of that. And we think that that's going to be sellable anywhere. I think there's going to be a lot of people open to seeing a wine company take that kind of a step. So our goal really now is California, but we're quickly looking at 5 additional markets. So those will expand out into states like Colorado, Illinois, New York, and Florida as we go. But we are going to be looking soon for a distribution agreement with a company that could take us to a national scale. So that's definitely in the plan.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And obviously you did something super unique. And I love, the name. I love your model that you used. I mean, that it was just so well thought out, and how, like you said, women can associate immediately to it. It's women empowerment, right? It's that recognition. And I really loved one of the clips is just walking, she's vacuuming, and it's very little sneak. That is so what everyone goes through at home. Like, we all feel like that at home, right? Our home is our castle. You know what I mean? So how did you come up with this whole concept? I mean, that is like, you could have done just a regular queen, king. You could have done some stuff like more of, different castles or whatever. What was the secret behind this? That's what I want to know.
It's such a long process in our case, but I have to say it all began with a great team. So we're fortunate enough, we started this project out of a branding agency. Yeah. So already, we have a talented creative team, a talented team of strategists, researchers. So we put this together on a really slow track anyway. This is going to be a passion project. So we wanted to take our time doing it. Like I said, it started with the research. But I think as we got going, the inspiration of the things that we started to see doing research in history and understanding the role of queens, it was interesting to me that a lot of this isn't taught. It's not available, but there are some remarkable stories of very empowered females who had important roles throughout the history. And we wanted to kind of bring that alive. And through the process, trying different concepts, one of our team members started to notice the scepter. The scepter is present in all of these like Renaissance period paintings where they're holding the scepter and it's a symbol of their authority and their power. So we really started to see that take shape in different forms. I mean, they cross cultures, they cross time periods. There's a scepter in almost every queen's hand, and they're interesting. You know, they tend to be gold. They tend to be adorned with gems and other, shiny objects. So we started to take notice, and then the concept came from one of our creative team members of holding the scepter as a wine bottle. And that's really where all this started to take off. It was pretty much a eureka moment, though, because when you see enough of these things and you're thinking of ways to think outside of the box, you end up looking at something that almost starts to look ordinary until someone turns it 180 degrees. And it's like, bam, there's an interesting concept. And by the way, I'll say, we were really inspired coming into this by the brand 19 Crimes that created the augmented reality label, where they were talking, you put your phone to it and it comes alive. And to us, that was a remarkable value creation engine that was pretty simple when you look at it on its face, but putting it on a wine bottle and making it come alive was something else. So we already had the bar set up high that we wanted to do something different that would take kind of that approach. And we did. We got an analog version of it where you can, fashion the wine bottle as a scepter, and it should mean something. But if nothing else, it challenges your perception. And that goes to the social mooring, right? We want to kind of turn conventions upside down. And this is what the whole meaning is.
Love that. I love that whole story and the meaning behind it, because I think people could really get behind that, right? Because they could associate it. They relate to it. And it's such a relatable matter now with all the social injustice, all these things coming to light. And people, want brands to associate with that. In essence, got their back when they're there, and they're going to be doing the same. They're going to be supporting your brand because of the message that's pretty clear that you're putting out there, right?
Absolutely. That's the intent, 100%.
Awesome. So your packaging as well. Now, when I looked at this, I said, this has to be some type of agency that puts together. And so you told me your background, I was like, there you go. Because this is just beautiful. I love the package. You guys went the extra mile with how it looks inside. It's just beautiful how the bottles are set in here. Yeah. It almost feels like when you buy an iPhone, right? Everything comes such pretty package, and obviously the image is just unreal. It's just so great. Your quality of your video, your model, everything. The music, everything was just impeccable. It's almost like this is like a mini film. I'm like, this is a really good messaging tool that you're using, and wine's the tool for the message you're putting out there, right? So.
Well, it's all very deliberate. The trend of watching, we're all staying home for the last 18 months or whatever it's been, and the trend of getting really up close and personal with Netflix and all the shows that are streaming, meant watching shows like Bridgerton and Game of Thrones and all these other productions that I think our segment really, really enjoy. And we wanted to make sure that our brand, as much as it has a serious message and there's a real serious component to the wine, that it's also a fun brand that's more than some fantasy, right? Because this is what makes it, I think, interesting and can spark more dialogue anyway. So that was all very deliberate. We worked with a super talented photographer to bring the art direction component alive and the video direction. Her name is Kate Woodman. And the result is just, what you see now, which is exactly what we want people to do, is kind of look at it and then maybe double take, right? Because she's a modern woman, but she's in a very traditional setting. And that's what we call Easter eggs, right? There's little subtle cues inside the imagery that make you kind of take a second look. If there's a message through the brand that we want to pass along, is just the uncorking of your inner queen and connecting with that empowerment message. That's what this scepter stands for as a symbol, and that's really what the inspiration is for the brand. So we want to tell more stories of women and their achievements and and to strengthen that message of empowerment throughout. That's really the key goal. I mean, it's amazing to me that we don't learn some of these stories already going through school and growing up. So if we can do a little part in supporting that, then that's a win for us as a brand.
That's true. I mean, I was watching the Queen, on Netflix, all the shows, right? So I'm like, that happened to her. How'd that even happen to Queen Elizabeth, or the other one, the monarch? And I was like, man, it was just going on where you could just watch, right? And you would see all these crazy things, and you would think they would have it great because they were royalty, right? But it was an uphill battle for them.
Totally. Exactly. And that's the key, is that, these are powerful women who did some amazing achievements, and there are powerful women abounding. And I think that reading stories today about how some women are still being paid 15 and 20% less than their male counterparts. These are issues that I think we can help spark dialogue around, right? So we can do our part to bridge the gap and make things more equal.
That's so true. Very true. And now I want to get to the wine. Now that I know I have a fellow marketing person. And before we get to the wine. So as a great marketing company that you are, you know where you lack, right? And you're saying, I need to bring on a great som. So tell me, what's the story between you and Meghan?
Meghan Vergara has been part of this project from day one. I would say as soon as we got the green light that we were going to do this, we knew that we wanted to put a huge emphasis on the product, because we were confident we would come up with something that we could make look really nice.
Right.
But it's not a component. One thing I don't like about big branded efforts is the product itself is the forgotten piece of the puzzle. That to me is a miss. And I see that a lot, unfortunately, in wine, where essentially you might get sugar, grape juice, and it's not the experience that maybe the package wants you to believe it is. Right. And that was not going to be the case here. So we reached out to find a som who could help us work on product and really act as our product ambassador. And that was Meghan. She happened to be local and available when we started the project. So she came in, we hit it off. And from there, we started exploring the world of wine together. And it was an interesting approach. She helped educate us on the things that were more technical aspects of wine and winemaking. And we really relied on her expertise as a sommelier when we were tasting samples and helping to understand what direction we wanted to build. So everything was done kind of lockstep in terms of understanding the research and then starting to figure out what kind of an approach we were going to take. And then the next step was actually figuring out how to create that and bring it all alive. And Meghan's been a part of it all. So we're lucky to have her and her expertise. She's got a great palate and she's super passionate about wine. So she she was kind of like a godsend.
Yeah. No, she is. She's amazing, right? And I think it also validates your product that it's not just a gimmick, right?
Right.
We know there's a message behind it, and there's a lot of people doing different types of messaging just to put things out there. Obviously, you did something more than just a message. You put a product behind it, right? And then obviously having such a great team, and obviously Meghan giving you the direction where to get your wine, where to buy fruit from, and then tasting it. I mean, that and her endorsing that and knowing that she already has her own wine, her M Vino Rose or M Rose. That is just, it's a great qualifier. That's what I was like, okay, if you're behind it, Meghan, we'll support you as well, right? Because she's coming from the som world, right? So that's amazing. So
yeah, 100%. No, and she's been great. Like I said, there's a lot of times you need to zig and you need to zag, and having Meghan there on the team with us was a great strength in terms of making sure we took the right decisions and we got to a point where we are, which I don't think would have been the case if we just tried to do this without the benefit of her expertise.
No, that's true. Because you can
no winging it.
Yeah, exactly. You can't wing in that aspect, right?
No, and that's not what we wanted to do. So her involvement has been key, and I think when you taste the wines, you'll see the reflection of that quality and the intent behind it. It's all been very deliberate.
Well, awesome. Well, let's get right to it. So we're going to start off with your rosé, right?
Yes, sir. The rosé. This is where we started the project, by the way, in terms of finding Columbia Valley as the place, this was the juice that we tasted. I just, just looking at the color, you can see there's something unique and remarkable in this blend. It's a Cabernet and Syrah blend.
Yeah, beautiful color, right? And you guys, I mean, the way you got the tannins out of this is beautiful.
Yeah, this style too was important because as a consumer thinking about wine and just shopping for something like rosé, I think there's a lot of it out there, and it's one category in wine that I think is doing spectacular things on the brand side. If you look at the rosé wall at some of these markets where you can buy it, it's outstanding. But the juice inside is not always the same as what your expectations. So I think the key here is we wanted to line up something that tasted very approachable, but still had a sophistication to it. So, it drinks on the dry side. It's medium body, but it also has a little sweetness to it, and the fruit is very apparent. And that was what we were aiming for. So when I smell it, I don't know if you got this, Oscar, but the first thing I get every time I smell this is a hint of strawberry. Are you getting that?
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. I love the aromatic funks.
It's the first thing we like to do when we open up, a bottle and pour a glass is I love to look at the color, but then it's right to the nose. And, it's the promise of what's to come on the palate after. And I think that was what drew us into this region, was tasting this for the first time. It was pretty much a stunner in terms of the juice, the underlying juice that we tasted. So.
Yeah, I love the watermelon. You said the honeydew. You pick up great finish, and I love that I'm not a big fan of a sweet rosé, right? And this is not. It has a nice hint of it, and that's what you get with the fruit. With the honeydew and the watermelon, you can get that's as sweet as you're going to get, but it has a nice crisp, dry finish at the end. I love that. I would drink this all day.
I think what you get at the end of this is a real taste of the Columbia Valley, actually. It's the one wine of the three where the finish, you get a hint of the minerality that is almost like you're tasting something that you just grabbed from the ground in the Columbia Valley. And that to me was very, very romantic aspect of the rosé, is you can get the terroir out of it. So that we're really happy with how this came out. For sure, because it's a lighter drinking rosé, like you said, gives you a little bit of the sophisticated aspects of it, but still a nice approachability with the fruit and a tad of the sweetness. Obviously,
with the market being so hot on rosés, right? It's so hard to compete. Obviously, you have the marketing down, and the other thing you have down is the taste. Impeccable, love it. And then the other thing, most importantly, so people can try your product, your price. $20. Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. And when you know what goes into making a bottle of wine, I think it's a phenomenal price point. Oh, yeah. Considering the care, the attention, the way those grapes are doted over, how they get the harvest into the winemaking operation. I mean, every step of this operation is well thought out, which is something that not everyone appreciates, but you hope they do. And to get it in a $20 package, I think it's a really good value proposition.
Yeah, when I look at that, usually, you look at other brands and they're between $5, $10, $10, $15, and obviously they can produce a lot more, right? And they're mass producers. Doesn't mean that the wine is any less good. They just have the capability to produce larger quantities, right? And I think what makes you stand out as a boutique winery is that, hey, I don't have that much quantity. I'm going to sell a little bit more higher than your typical other brand, but it's really going to stand out, and you did it. I mean, it really does. It's really great. So
I'm glad to have you taste it and to hear these things. When you're doing this project, a lot of it is like, it's an echo chamber. So this is a unique opportunity now that we're out in the market and actually about to launch this brand, and tasting it and hearing some of this feedback. It's very validating.
Wow. And now as we're moving on to your Chardonnay.
The Chardonnay. This was fun to make. We took a lot of time making this. Megan and I would taste, I would say, many variations and make notes and send them back and so forth. And the reason why is because I think the market for Chardonnays is one of the more complex ones. Everyone has an expectation about what they want in a Chardonnay. And there are some brands that live by those, like the buttery Chardonnays and the oaky ones. And when we analyzed, we thought there's an opportunity to bridge the gap for something that was just like the rosé, more approachable, but still sophisticated, but less. We thought that the attraction to oaky, buttery was diminishing, and this is going to be a lighter. And you can see it right off the bat with the color. I mean, this is a fairly light colored rosé. Chardonnay. And from there, I think that leads you into, smelling it, and you can get different hints of fruit. There's a tad of the green fruit, and then you're going to get some sweetness on the nose. Mm-hmm. And then something that I like to call butterscotch that not everyone detects, but it's like a little candied finish. So
since you said that, and that's the whole thing, now you find it in your brain, it identifies it. It's like, okay, you said butterscotch. Like, oh man.
Yeah, it's like a caramelized fruit, butterscotchy flavor. That's kind of how it finishes for me. And I love that about the Chardonnay.
So yeah, I pick up that slightly the pear, the apple. It's very nice, very subtle. Now I gotta just put the butterscotch, I think it kind of lingers around your tongue.
Exactly. It's the finish.
It's the finish. I was like, wait a minute. I actually do pick it up around. Like, wow.
It's like one of those subtle things that you look for, like what is the fruit telling us? And that's a unique little hint. And I really liked it. And when we were doing this blend, we tried to extract a bit more of it. So I think we got enough of it where that's like a nice characteristic to have on the finish.
I think obviously we all love there's a time and place for the buttery type Chardonnay, very oaky. Deliberately, I'd never go and pick up Chardonnays. And I'm like, well, hold on, let me go pick up a bottle. That's very, I'd rather have like a Pinot Grigio or something, or a rosé or so forth.
Yeah.
But now as I see the market is actually listening to their consumers about how to make this type of style as well available. It's being made everywhere now. It's being sold. Now you want to think like for this heat that we're experiencing right now, right? We're like, Where's the Pinot Grigio? Where's a nice Chardonnay? Stainless steel. What's a nice stainless steel, beautiful wine that we can pick up for this weather that we're having? And this is beautiful. Another great wine.
I'm glad you said so. It's a Chardonnay that I would challenge non-Chardonnay drinkers to try, because I think there's enough of the variety in here, but it's not the typical expression. And I think what I hear the most from our focus groups is I didn't like Chardonnay, but I liked this Chardonnay. If that makes any sense. So we may have a new segment on our hands with it. But it's light. I like to call this one like it's fresh. It's a version of Chardonnay that's not as deep in terms of that flavor profile you typically get.
Now I want to get to the red, where the royalty. This is what it was all about, right? For most of the part, all they drank was red. That's all you see them in all the movies, right? You never see them ever drinking a Chardonnay or anything else, right?
Red is like the dramatic one in the group.
Right.
It feels elegant and sophisticated. The color, of course, we talked about the color initially. I mean, just being able to look through the light and see the deep hues of red and the dark parts of the red. It really is the moody aspect of our brand encapsulated in a glass, if you want to put it that way. Right. So really nice deep color, but on the nose, what do you get, Oscar? See.
Oh, wow. I'm picking up a nice little sweetness.
Yeah. I hear the word jam so much in wine, and I'm afraid I have to use it because this is kind of the jam.
I pick up like almost like a Jolly Rancher scent from the strawberry, the strawberry jammy. That's what I associate about. I'm thinking about a Jolly Rancher.
Well, that's interesting. There's something about, so all the profiles of each of the wines that we're tasting today, they have the same kind of ask, which is to be approachable in terms of pleasing the person who's going to drink it. But there's a sophistication to it as well. So it drinks a little drier than a wine in this category typically does. But the biggest emphasis I put in through the winemaking process here is on the silky mouth feel. For me, I love the wines that can give you some sweetness and some dryness, but I can't forgive too many, I think we call it chewiness, the dryness aspect. Right. It's too hard of an ask for me. So what this has is a little bit of a smoothed out silkiness to it. And that was very intentional. And the reason is I think that's shared by a lot of people. I think the dry wines are hard for most people, to drink just on their own. And this is a very drinkable red. So,
and you got the top three in there, right? You got Merlot, you got your Cabernet, and you have a Syrah.
Yes. So these three wines, I think, come together and make it a little symphony in this glass. There's a lot of components that work well together. They kind of play off of one another. The Cabernet, I'm a big Cab lover. So right off the bat, when I thought about our red, it was going to be a Cab. But then tasting the Cabs and getting the profile of some of the aspects of the green pepper, it just didn't feel like we were going to hit the mark where we targeted for our wine drinker. So that's where the Merlot came in, and then the Syrah. So together, these really, I think, balance each other out and give enough complexity, but not losing the approachability. So the one thing I hear about this one is a lot of people just want to take another sip. And that was music to my ears. What amazed me in this project, being kind of an outsider coming into the winemaking process, is learning how much effect one grape, one juice can have on the whole blend. So it is really an art as much as a science when you're blending things together, because you can get some really different outcomes. So being specific to the different types of things we could add in here really change the outcome.
And even though it is more of a lighter blend, I like that. It has a lot of characteristics of a full body Cab. So I think that was it's very noted. It's like, I can note that I'm like, okay, I taste the Cab and it has that structure, but it's not as heavy as a Cab. Yeah. And that was, it's like, that was an intended purpose that you did for this, right?
Yeah. So, it sounds, when we're talking about it, I could see how it could sound, making these blends, it really is art and science though. I mean, you put something in there and just dial up the percentage a little bit, and it can dramatically change the outcome. It can change things like the mouthfeel, it could change the nose, the color, everything changes. So it really is by trial and error that we got to this optimized wine that we have right here. Opportunity to go back to the branding message, because when you try to be all things to all people, it's hard to get a win from that. I would say it's impossible. But if you really focus in on who you're trying to please as the ultimate wine drinker of this wine, it gets easier, because then you talk to them about what they like, what they don't like. And then you actually watch them, because sometimes they don't know and they don't express it. But through focus groups and different opportunities where you can observe, we get the insights about what people really like. And I think this is what, got us into this blend, and the variations that we tried led us to the ultimate product that you have in your glass now, which is something that is going to hopefully please a lot of people who are going to be attracted first by the package and then get it home, and they'll see it as exceeding their expectation. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope everyone gets a chance to try these wines, and I look forward to hearing the reactions.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Robert, for your time. I look forward to meeting you soon in your tasting room. So one last thing. Yeah. So where is this tasting room you have in Carlsbad? Or is
So
it-
right now we only do the private tastings. We're based in Carlsbad. Obviously the wine is coming from the estate vineyards in Columbia Valley. We have plans though to expand the operation into an urban tasting room. So keep your ear to the ground. We're definitely going to have a lot of news in the next months about what we're doing and where people can get involved. We do also do tasting events. So check out our website, get on our newsletter. We have a newsletter called The Spill, which talks about all of these issues that we covered and is a good way for you to stay in the know about what's coming up next.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Robert, for your time. I look forward to meeting you soon in person.
Thank you.